The High Court has released jailed schoolteacher Enoch Burke, and he's being released without, or it's on an open-ended basis. Why has the High Court released him? Is it a case of the judge taking the view, come down off the cross, Enoch, we need the wood, or is there other reasons? Well, essentially, there are several considerations taken, or several factors taken into account. Let's have a look at them. Reporting in the Irish Examiner today, article, piece by Anne O'Loughlin. Mr. Justice Brian O'Moore said that this was one of those rare cases where a coercive imprisonment should stop for the moment, even though Mr. Burke has not purged his contempt. The judge delivered his ruling on the matter after considering brief submissions regarding a proposal that the teacher be released from prison. The submissions were made to the court from both Mr. Burke and lawyers for the school. The judge said that the school could come back to court and seek Mr. Burke's attachment, and if he does not comply with the order, to stay away from the school. So there is a couple of possibilities there. Mr. Burke could be imprisoned again, and there could be a sequestration order, in other words, sequestration of assets. That could, for example, include going after any assets that Mr. Burke might have, or it could be attachment of earnings. So Mr. Burke is to remain at liberty until any further order is made imprisoning him. The only threat to his continued freedom, Mr. Justice O'Moore said, would arise again if he breaches any existing order of the court. Mr. Burke has spent 3.5 months in prison. Mr. Justice O'Moore said his ruling it was difficult to avoid the conclusion that Mr. Burke was exploiting his imprisonment for his own ends. This, the judge said, was a reason why Mr. Burke had taken such a, quote, unreal view of what orders from the High Court actually mean. It would explain, too, why he resisted an early trial, which could have seen him free now or in the cusp of freedom, the judge said. It would also explain why, after 100 days in prison, Mr. Burke had rejected a proposal made to him earlier this week by Mr. Justice Conor Dignam that could have led to his immediate release. The purpose of jailing somebody for contempt is to coerce an individual to obey a court order. This, while unattractive, is true, the judge said. This purpose, the judge says, was turned on its head when the person concerned is prepared to endure the undoubted discomforts of being imprisoned to obtain some greater benefit, as they see it. Mr. Justice O'Moore said that the only plausible interpretation of Mr. Burke's actions is that he sees some advantage in his continuing imprisonment. Otherwise, he would have either avoided his jailing or taken the opportunity to bring it to an end. In those circumstances, his continued jailing would only facilitate whatever he feels he's currently achieving by being imprisoned, he said. The judge said that the court would not enable somebody found to be in contempt of court to garner some advantage from that defiance. He directed then that Mr. Burke's release be open-ended and not just for the Christmas period. He added that obeying a court order was not inconsistent with Christian principles, adding that, quote, it was strange that Mr. Burke would behave as if this was so. The judge also described positions taken by Mr. Burke at various stages of the proceedings as, quote, illogical and had the effect of, quote, prolonging his incarceration. The judge also said that Mr. Burke's views about transgender people are much better known now than before he was sent to Mountjoy. Earlier this year, the judge said that he was an ordinary teacher, history and German teacher in a Westmeath school. Now he's a household name, and his imprisonment has played a central part in that role. Mr. Burke reiterated to Mr. Justice O'Moore that he was not interested in being released for the festive period, which he described as a Christmas gift, and that he wanted to leave the court vindicated. In his ruling, Mr. Justice O'Moore said he had to take several factors into consideration before arriving at his decision, including the attitude of the school, which did not oppose his release, the Christmas holidays, and the use of public funds. The judge said that while the impasse continued, the taxpayers would be burdened with paying Mr. Burke's salary as well as paying for his upkeep at Mountjoy. It was difficult to know which was more costly, the judge said. whatever the figures involved. The judge said that it was intolerable that the public, Josephine and Joe Public, would be paying until some indefinite date Mr. Burke's wages and for his incarceration. This double draw on public finances was another reason why the court was going to release him from prison. While Mr. Burke is not at liberty, the case will return before the court in the new year. It'll be interesting to see. That's the reporting in the Examiner. In the Irish Times, Mary Carlin has a similar article. Obviously, she's reporting what the judge said in the court. It's an open-ended basis. She reminds us that the school put Mr. Burke on a paid administrative leave in September pending a disciplinary process arising from his behaviour at a school event last June, where he publicly questioned the then principal over an earlier direction from her to teachers to address a transitioning pupil by their chosen name and using the pronoun they. Mr. Burke claims that direction and the court orders breach his constitutional rights, including to freedom of religious belief. Mr. Justice O'Moore said it was not a unique case, but one of the very rare cases where the coercive imprisonment should stop. His decision balanced 6 factors: Mr. Burke's failure to obey a court order, the school's attitude and lack of opposition to his Christmas release, the Christmas holidays, use of public funds, alternative measures, and Mr. Burke's motivation as the reason for the decision. On motivation, he said Mr. Burke's continued jailing would only facilitate whatever he feels he's currently achieving. He said that Mr. Burke had wrongly claimed he faces jail because of his religious convictions and was acting in a way likely to prolong his imprisonment. The judge stressed that complying with the court orders does not in any way compromise Mr. Burke's religious belief or require him to do anything in violation of those beliefs. The orders did not oblige Mr. Burke to address anyone in a particular way or to use a specific style or title, and in essence prohibited Mr. Burke entering the school's premises or interfering with its educational activities. It's worth repeating that the court orders do not and did not oblige Mr. Burke to address anyone in a particular way or to use a specific style or title, and in essence, 1. prohibited Mr. Burke entering the school's premises, and 2. interfering with its educational activities. That is what the court orders were about. Rosemary Mallon, BL for the school, said this application for committal was intended as coercive, and its concern had always been to prevent disruption to pupils. There would be no disruption if Mr. Burke was released for the school holidays, but the school was concerned about what happened after the school returned on January the 5th, and given Mr. Burke's stance, he should remain in prison. So it will be interesting to see how this pans out. The school is closed now, presumably for the Christmas holidays. It opens again on January 5th. It'll be interesting to see what happens then. It also will be interesting to see, obviously, the disciplinary process, the disciplinary procedure in the school, like in all workplaces, will have to take its course, run its course, and a determination or decision will have to be made. And then obviously the High Court actions will have to be determined as well in the new year. I think there's a hearing in February, and Mr. Burke obviously has challenged the disciplinary process in the school as manifestly unlawful and is looking for an order from the High Court to that effect. That's to be dealt with in the new year. I think in February, there's a date given in February there for that. But it's worth reiterating again that hope you find this video useful. If you do, I'd appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below, and I'd be interested in seeing or reading your views down below about this case. Was Mr. Justice Brian O'Moore correct in his decision in releasing Mr. Burke on an open-ended basis? Drop your comments down below. If you find the video useful, informative, or whatever, I'd appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below, and you may be interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel. Thanks a lot.